So in the last few camera reviews that I've done, I've started mixing things up a little bit, and I've done footage where I've been out on the street shooting, and a lot of people have asked me in the comments, what camera are you using to film the street footage on? And what happens is I'll get like one comment, and then you'll get another and another, and if you start answering them, nobody reads the replies, so I thought maybe it'd just be easy to do a video and share with you guys. Believe it or not, this is kind of one of my new favorite things. I've been using the GoPro Hero 8, and I'm actually filming this on a GoPro Hero 8. So I know this is a little bit of an inception, but basically the deal is that GoPro reached out to me and said, would you like to review one? I said, absolutely. So it's going to be a few weeks before we have some review models, and I couldn't wait, so I bought one, so now I have two. So I thought it would be pretty fun to do a GoPro Hero 8 review that's filmed pretty much on the GoPro Hero 8. So we're going to break this down. I'm going to talk about all the cool features that I find very useful in this, but real quick, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor today, who are the awesome folks over at GearFocus. So if you want to offload gear that you're just not using anymore, traditionally we've only had a few options. You can trade it in for something new, which is quick and simple, but you only get 30 to 40 cents on the dollar. It's pretty hassle-free, but you just don't get any value out of the equipment that you already own. Of course, you could also use an auction site like eBay, but be prepared to pay a 10 to 13% commission, and if you take credit cards, there's another 2.9% plus 35 cents per transaction. Those fees actually come from the banks. There's no way around them. But I want to mention a new option, which is GearFocus.com. GearFocus is an online marketplace for buying and selling photography and photo gear. Their commission fee is only 3.5% after an item has sold, which is the lowest that you're going to find anywhere. If you want to purchase equipment, they have an excellent support staff that approves all listings, and they know what red flags to look for, like poor descriptions or images not of the actual item that's being sold. GearFocus.com takes a great deal of pride in building a community of reputable buyers and sellers, and quite frankly, this is actually something that our industry has needed for a long time now. I've even tried GearFocus for myself this week. I have an old Canon 5D Mark III that sits on the shelf and doesn't get much use, so I decided that I would go ahead and sell it on GearFocus and maybe get it to a good home of somebody who would appreciate it more. It's extremely easy to upload images, get your description set, and of course GearFocus are extremely helpful and responsive if you have questions on pricing or your descriptions. So head over to GearFocus.com by using the link in the description. I think you're going to find this to be an excellent resource for not only buying equipment, but also a way to offload equipment that you're no longer using. So check it out, and I want to give a special thanks to the folks at GearFocus.com for sponsoring an episode of The Art of Photography. So one thing that you should know about me, I've got a lot of GoPros. In fact, I'm kind of a huge GoPro nerd. The first GoPro that I ever purchased was the GoPro Hero 4, which was just this little box that you had to put in a cage somehow, and it did 4K video. It didn't have any image stabilization, it didn't have any wind reduction, but in the right situation, it could be really cool. I actually skipped the GoPro Hero 5, but I did buy the Hero 5 Session, which is probably one of my favorite form factors for any GoPro. It's kind of too bad that they've abandoned it. Then came the GoPro Hero6 Black Edition, which was the first GoPro to feature some kind of image stabilization, which really wasn't that great, but at least it was a step in the right direction. Then came the GoPro Hero 7 Black, which up to date was one of my favorite GoPro Heroes. I think that the image stabilization, which they rebranded as Hypersmooth, was exceptional in this camera. And then this brings us now to the GoPro Hero 8. But of course, we have to talk about the big feature in the Hero 8, which is image stabilization. Now, this is a digital image stabilization that GoPro refers to as Hypersmooth, and we have now on the Hero 8 Hypersmooth 2.0. Let me give you a little brief history of GoPro and image stabilization. So right now I am filming on the GoPro Hero 6, and the wind has stopped, but maybe that'll come back up so you can hear a little of that kicking in. But anyway, this was a very frustrating model for me because it was the first one with image stabilization. I've just put it on the same selfie stick I've been using. It just wasn't as good. Now, if you're holding still, it's okay, but as soon as you start to walk, it is not the greatest in the world. It was okay, but then the Hero 7 came out. So the GoPro Hero 7, which I'm filming on right now, was the first version of the GoPro to feature Hypersmooth. And this was version 1, and this was really a massive improvement. And Hypersmooth 2 is even better, but I would actually go as far to say is if you are in a big budget and you really want a GoPro, this is the one that I would recommend. This one gets the job done. It's got the image stabilization, you can do hyperlapses, it's got all the essential stuff that the Hero 8 has improved on. It's still a very solid GoPro, but just to show you the difference, this is the Hero 7. And now back to the Hero 8 with Hypersmooth 2.0. This is one of my favorite GoPros, and as I mentioned earlier, it's completely replaced using a gimbal for me. I've been using it on a lot of my videos and camera reviews when I want to go out and about because I don't have to bring very much with me. Which brings me to another point, that these little tiny cameras used to be branded under the umbrella action cameras, and I think elements like Hypersmooth, the improved low light performance, so on and so forth, has kind of put these in a category where they're just not limited to what we consider to be an action camera. It's more of an everyday use camera. There have been some big improvements to the user interface in the Hero 8. We still have the swipeable touchscreen, so if you swipe left to right, this will change the mode that you're in from hyperlapse or time-lapse to video to stills. Once you're in any given mode, we now have buttons on the actual screen to do things like turn on slow motion or change your lens profile or go into the boost mode for hyperlapse for super steady motion. We also have the ability to use different custom settings, which is really nice if you film with different setups and you want to create custom profiles just to switch back and forth between them. Of course, sliding from the top down gives you your global settings and preferences, and swiping from the bottom up is going to give you access to all of your media files. The only problem that I've had is if you use multiple models of different GoPros while you're on a shoot, things have moved around in there in different locations. So it's a minor complaint, and I know it had to be done, and I know it's hard to update old GoPros to be uniform, but I just kind of wish there was a little more consistency there. I really like this interface. It's very clean, it's very intuitive. The first time you power up your GoPro, it's going to give you a tutorial telling you what everything does, so it's really easy to use. The GoPro also pairs well with the GoPro mobile app, which is available for either Apple iOS or Android, which allows you to do things like adjust your global settings or update your firmware, and it's really well executed. Another change that you're going to see is in the actual battery. Now, the batteries are the same size, they're the same milliamp hour rating, but the big difference is that GoPro has redesigned them slightly to give you a faster draw on the performance. This is done for some of the more power-intensive things that you have on the camera, for instance, the image stabilization, so on and so forth. Now, these batteries are backwards compatible with older GoPros if you have firmware updates. You can use the older batteries on this GoPro. The difference is that some features are unavailable, and so it's something to keep in mind if you have a whole bunch of GoPro batteries. Another thing that I'm very excited about on the Hero 8 is the low light performance. It is actually really good. See, part of the problem with an action camera is that they're really designed to be used in bright light. The truth is, you're not really in bright light most of the time. The GoPro Hero 7, I think, was really good at low light. However, the image stabilization would kind of fall apart and do weird things on you. The GoPro Hero 8 seems to have that worked out just fine. I'm not sure this was the best day to do a camera review outside with 25-mile-an-hour wind gusts and rain, but hey, this camera is waterproof up to 33 feet. I don't think we're going to get anywhere near that today. So one feature that is much improved on the Hero 8 is the way it captures audio, and particularly the way it rejects wind noise. Now, it's really windy out here. You can hear it, but what it's doing is it's using 3 microphones and then an algorithm behind the scenes to kind of work out the noise versus what my voice is saying. And so I think it does a really nice job. You still hear the wind, but it's a little more ambient. It's actually kind of acceptable. GoPro has not always been this way. Kind of the early wind algorithms would kind of do weird things to the EQ, and it would sound like you were talking in a toilet sometimes. I think they've done a really nice job on this model. The Hero 8 has 4 different lens settings depending on what your resolution is set at. This first one is super wide, which is the equivalent of a 16mm on a full frame camera. You've got standard wide, which crops in a little bit on the sensor, but still gives you up to 4K resolution. We have linear, which is kind of a standard view. This is the one I use pretty much 100% of the time because it looks like a regular lens. You don't get that weird fisheye effect. And if you're willing to give up just a little bit of resolution, this is narrow. The highest this will go is actually 2K. You're watching it upscaled to 4K. It looks fine. We're going to go back to linear because that's how I like to roll. Interestingly enough, on the GoPro Hero 7, the last model, linear was not available in 4K, and so you had to drop down to 2K for that. So camera's gotten a lot better in a lot of ways. Another thing to note about the Hero 8 is this is the first GoPro that we have that does not require an external housing to do any mounting with. In other words, we used to have the little cage it would fit in, and that's how you would mount it to a tripod or a helmet or a chest or whatever you want to do. This one has these 2 little feet that stick out on the bottom. You simply snap those out and it snaps into place. It It is a really good thing. I know why they did this. I'm getting to that. But the downside of this is we do not have the removable lens protector. Now, if you film a lot on a GoPro, you'll know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to have this problem today because it's very overcast. But typically when it's sunny, if you get the right flare in, it gets the GoPro flare. And a lot of times I would just take it off to avoid that. I would also use it to mount filters, maybe a neutral density, something like that. The one downside to this is that if you drive your GoPros hard and you use them in a lot of extreme situations and you happen to scratch or crack that glass, it's game over. You have to get a whole new GoPro. So for what that's worth, GoPro do make some protectors for this. They've even got a cage system. I'm not really sure how that works, but anyway, it's something to note and something to know going in. Depends on how hard you push these things. If you use the Hero 8 for photography, there's some really cool features as well. For instance, you have the ability to do HDR photos, where it'll take multiple exposures and stitch them together in camera. It has a feature called Super Photo, which applies its own computational imaging onto the image, or you can just shoot raw or get a JPEG straight out of the camera. Of course, you have the ability to shoot hyperlapses, which is a feature that's kind of like a time lapse, but you can stay moving. I filmed this whole sequence just while walking and holding the camera right in front of me. It also features voice commands. You can do 1080p streaming on social media or onto YouTube. It's got a lot of great features that I really haven't even gone into here because I don't particularly use them myself, but I'm curious as to know if this is something you guys would like to see me cover more often, like what you can do with really powerful tiny cameras such as the GoPro. Drop me a comment and let me know. I'm gonna try and get out of here before the rain starts again. I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, later.